Don't let the recording intimidate you. It only goes to our group. It doesn't go anywhere outside of us. So, all right. So welcome to our what we call our pre-assessment webinar. Some of you have already done a lot of assessments. I was just in, right before I started the webinar stuff, I was just in the website responding to some submissions that people had. So if you haven't started yet, it's okay, you're not behind. If you have, you're just really ambitious and a little bit ahead, and that's perfectly okay. So we've got a couple of purposes here today. We're going to talk a little bit about Module 5. I think most everybody has posted. If you haven't hit submit yet, I think I think everybody's at least got a draft in Module 5 talking about challenges. And I do go in and peek at those drafts sometimes. But we're going to talk about the challenges that you're thinking about in implementation, and then we're just going to preview the diagnostic assessment materials and talk about some ideas for organizing those materials as you get started assessing. As always, if you have questions or comments or thoughts, don't hesitate to share them. You all have the ability to unmute yourselves, and I welcome you to do that. We're not a big group, so feel free to do that. All right, so in our first webinar, we referred to the evidence-based techniques you're going to be learning for diagnostic assessment and reading instruction as your new shopping cart. And we pointed out that your new shopping cart might not work in your old store, which is your classroom and your program as you know it now. We found out that we're going to have to remodel our stores as we build our new carts, and it's tempting just to work on the cart. The cart's the fun part, and to forget about the store. But if you don't remodel the store, the cart won't work as well. So now that you know a little bit more about where we're headed in STAR training, Module 5 asked each program team to identify some things that might need to be remodeled in their programs or classrooms. So like I say, I've already kind of looked at what you had in there, but I'm also going to launch a poll here, and you can choose as many of these as you want to. The question is, what are your program's challenges to implementing EBRI, or evidence-based reading instruction? So you should be able to see the poll. And you can pick multiple answers here if you need to. All right, anybody still working on it? I don't want to rush anybody, but it looks like we've got some consensus here. I'm happy to see nobody picked buy-in from teachers. That's a good thing. Yay. It looks like the winners, kind of resounding winners, were time to do diagnostic assessment and dedicating time to reading instruction, which are not unusual. A couple of people said managed enrollment, discussing weaknesses in a positive light. That can be hard. Buy-in from students. Some of you have talked about that already. So, you know, those challenges are fairly common. And I think that, you know, the ones on the screen right now are some of the ones that come up all the time. It's not unusual to see that. It's not unusual to have those needs. I think they're needs no matter what we're doing in our classroom. I mean, couldn't we all use more time and space and resources at any given time of the day? I'm really grateful you can only kind of see a corner of my desk, because the rest of it is even messier than that one corner you can see, just because I'm trying to get stuff ready to go on some different things. So we all have those challenges, and what's unique is how each program is going to work to address them to meet your own needs the needs of your students. I've worked on this in my own program for a long time, and I've worked on it with a lot of other programs in other states too. So I've got ideas, and I'm always willing to share them, but I also really love to hear your ideas because people come up with new creative ways to work with this all the time. And I love hearing those things. So you don't need to solve these challenges now, right? We just want you to start thinking about them. We want them on your radar. Module 12 is your next program team meeting, and during that meeting, you'll actually start to set some goals to address some of your challenges. We'll create action plans during that time. That's when we'll be face-to-face together, which is kind of nice because I think it's easy to collaborate, not just with your team, but between teams in that face-to-face setting too. And several of you have expressed similar challenges, so it might help you to share ideas in that kind of a discussion. So I'm excited about that. So let's move on to what you might have learned in modules 3 and 4. And I've got another poll here. This one's got 3 questions. So I'm going to launch it. And again, 2 of these, you can pick as many as you need to. I think there's one of them that there's only one answer that you can choose. Yeah, number 2 has a single answer. The other 2 have multiples. Everybody good? You guys, you kind of ran the table on this one. I just am so happy. Obviously, stuff made sense when you were in the modules and working through the material. So excellent work. Yeah, so the 4 reading components: vocabulary, comprehension, fluency, and alphabetics. Diagnostic reading assessment is important, mostly important for our intermediate readers because they're so diverse in their needs. And then our reasons that we do diagnostic assessment, we're looking for the appropriate text levels to instruct each student, and we want to determine those instructional priorities. So very, very good work on the quiz. So we got the review done. We can go on now, and I want to talk a little bit about getting ready to do diagnostic assessment. These next 4 modules are going to teach you how to do those diagnostic assessments in each of the components. Each module includes an assignment where you try out diagnostic assessment for that component on some of your readers, just 1 or 2. I actually had a couple questions already. They do not have to be your actual students. I mean, it's nice if they are, so you get some of that realistic looking results. But if you want to try it first on a family member or a friend or one of your coworkers, you certainly can do that so you feel a little bit more comfortable about it. I have found in the past that if I just tell my students, you know, this is something I'm learning how to do and I need to practice, so would you be willing to practice with me so that I can learn how to do this? They usually respond really well to that because it's interesting to them that you're feeling uncertain about something new that you're learning, just like they do all the time. So you can definitely try that out. And then you're going to reflect on that experience in assessing in your online portfolio again. Now, the STAR project does not promote any specific assessment materials, but South Dakota has made a choice, and we chose this one, the Bader Reading and Language Inventory. We're on the 7th edition. You might have an older one in your office. I should have pulled my other ones off the shelf. I think I have everything like 4th, 5th, and 6th too. I think I've got them all. 7th is the most recent one. So hopefully you've each found a copy at your program site. At one point, the state bought a copy for every program site.
I can't find any here, Becky.
You can't find one there? I've probably got an extra floating around here that I can get to you.
Okay.
So if you haven't, you might want to get one. If you have a different edition, you can still use it. Just be aware some of the page numbers that I'm going to give you might be a little different in your edition. A few of the passages might have changed slightly. I know in one of the older versions, there's one of them that talks about shopping in a mail order catalog, which I'm old enough to remember mail order catalogs. Jim's holding up a CD.
What's this?
Yeah, exactly.
I had to bring it home and transfer it to a flash drive because we don't have any CD player.
You don't have any computers that have CD drives in them anymore. Yep, exactly. So yeah, it's the old technology. The new one talks about shopping online, which is more relevant to most of our students these days. But when you view the modules, the directions for scoring those diagnostic assessments can seem a little vague, and that's because we made them kind of generic so that they can apply generally to different assessments that states might use. There's another one called the DAR, Diagnostic Assessments of Reading, that costs about, I don't know, 4 times as much as the BATER does, which is why South Dakota uses the BATER. So the directions for that one are slightly different. So we'll sometimes show you a range. You might say like 70 to 90% is considered mastery. Well, when you use the BATER, we're going to tell you exactly what percent should you be looking for according to the directions in this test book. That way, if you're just using the BATER, you'll know exactly what you're looking for. And if you use something different, you're going to want to read the directions in that assessment piece to know what you're looking for. And then I'm also going to show you how I organize my assessment materials into a kit like the photo on the screen. You don't have to organize your materials exactly like I do, but you do need to find a way to organize them because there's a lot of pieces and you need to be able to move between levels and between assessments pretty quickly and comfortably. So this is actually my kit. Picture on there is my colleague Jane Meyer. It was her kit, but mine is set up really basically the same as hers. It's an accordion folder with different colored stuff in it, and we're going to go through what that all is and what it means, and you should be able to create something like that with the pieces that I emailed out to you. So I tried organizing things several different ways before I finally came up with the file folder that I mailed to you. And one of the things that Jane and I worked together on is that student diagnostic reading assessment record that I emailed to you. So if you want to take a look at that and make notes on it as we go, I can always get you a clean copy if you need one, or if you just want to pull it up and look at it while we're going through it. I print out a copy of this record, so I have one for each student I assess. And that's the paper I use to record the results of all my assessments. So it helps me remember what the students did on everything. And I also include on there, because I need a cheat sheet, quite honestly, all the specific directions for each of the assessments. I'm going to pull it up here. Stop sharing for a second, make sure that it's actually showing. Okay, so that's the one I'm talking about, that student diagnostic assessment record. Make it a little bigger. And you can see it tells us at the top on the alphabetics test, you want the highest level with at least 9 words correct, right? It's a little cheat sheet for you. So on the first page, you have this chart where I record the results from each assessment so I can look at them all together, determine what the instructional priorities are, what levels of text are most appropriate for instruction. There's a similar sheet that you can find in the resources for Module 10. And there's actually in Module 10, there's a completed record for a student that I assessed that you'll see in a video in that module. So you'll be able to see how I filled it out. You'll learn more about doing the diagnostic assessments in the modules, but this quick overview is just going to kind of help you know where your materials are, and it might help you to have your materials to refer to when you're viewing the modules. So for alphabetics assessment, you're going to learn that we have students read those graded word lists out of the Baders. You can find the examiner's copies of those graded word lists on pages 23 and 24 in your Bader, and the copies that the students read from starting on page RP6 in the back of the book. Our student assessment record actually just tailors the Bader to our needs. So if you look at page 2 of the student assessment record, I'm going to scroll, I apologize. You'll see this is the sheet where I'm marking off what the students say as they read, right? This is not the one that I hand to the students. We started with the second grade list because usually our students don't go below grade 2. If you find your students are going lower than that, you can always alter this. It's just a Word doc. You can make this your own. You can change anything you want to on it. We end with the 8th grade list because, again, for intermediate level adult readers, we don't go beyond that one. If they read up through the 8th grade list accurately, we know that's not an issue for them. They don't need to work on alphabetics. You might be wondering, why do you need the Bader book since I sent you this thing? That's because if you buy a Bader, you actually have permission to copy and use her examiner's copies. So instead of everyone having to cut and paste what we've done, we just did the work for you. We're comfortable giving you this copy if you have a copy of the book. The book also has a lot more specific directions and explanations, which you might be interested in once you get the basics down. When somebody asks me a diagnostic assessment question that I'm not 100% sure of, I always pull out my Bader and just go back through the directions and make sure I'm telling you correctly. So all of those directions are in there. So you can see in here, all the word lists are on one page ready to go. And at the top of the page are the directions you're going to use for those Bader alphabetics lists. Start with the list at the student's TABE reading level, continue till you find the highest list where the student has at least 9 words correct. So you'll actually be marking the words on this list and writing in what the student says if they miss the word. After you find the highest level where the student's successful, you'll go back and mark that level on the first page of that diagnostic assessment record. And then the students actually read off of bigger lists. And that's the second document I sent you. The one that's marked assessment kit pieces. Sorry, I'm starting in the middle. And it tells you, make a folder, print the lists, cut them to a smaller size, cut the grade level off so the students don't see it. We recommend you glue them onto cardstock. It makes them a little bit more durable. And then you just write the letter of the grade, or write the number of the grade on the back of the list. So if you see on mine, I've got those lists on green cardstock, and on the back, you can kind of see in this right-hand picture, it's a little hard to see because of the glare because they're laminated, so they hold up even better. But I just have a number 2. So I didn't write grade 2 or level 2. I just put number 2 on there. For all the students know, I'm just giving them list number 2, list number 3, list number 4. They don't have to know there's a grade level attached to it.
Do you want us each to do our own set, Becky? Because I did those, and then I don't know if Jeremy can just use these 2 or.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, we have like one set in here, and we just have one kit in here, and because it's usually not going to happen that you're going to both need it at the same time, right? Yeah. Any questions about that? Like I said, you don't have to do it exactly like I did. It's a system that works for me. You can find your own system, and it might work better for you. In the module on alphabetics assessment, you're going to learn that if the highest list the student can read at least 9 words correctly on is grade 4 or below, they might have basic phonics needs too. So you want to give a basic phonics assessment. There's basic phonics assessments in the Bader, and they're not bad assessments, but one that we've used a lot is the Sylvia Green assessment, which is a free assessment you can download from the internet. It's part of the resources on the STAR website. there's two levels, level 1 and level 2. And I have both levels on page 3 of that student diagnostic assessment record, along with the directions. So looking at your assessment record, you'll see the words the student will be reading from their list. You write what the student says if they're incorrect, and then you look at the next column to see which phonics skills they're missing. So you know what they need to work on during instruction. So if in fan they say van, you know they missed that consonant. They said a V instead of an F. And so you know that they're going to need to work on consonants. There's a link to the Sylvia Green assessment in the resource section of the website. There's also a link in the resource tab for module 6. And it's right here in your student assessment record. And again, I've got both of those levels printed off and color coded on orange paper in an orange folder in my kit. The fluency assessment is similar to alphabetics, except instead of reading graded word lists, the students are reading graded passages. Now, the second grade passages in the Bader begin on page 59. And the Bader codes the passages E for elementary and S for secondary or adult. There's 2 E passages and 2 S passages for each grade level. The reading level is the same. The content is geared more towards adults in the S passages for secondary or adult. So I'm going to use passages for fluency and also for comprehension. So for my assessment kit, I selected either the SA or SB for fluency, and then I used the other one for comprehension assessment. So at the top of page 4 on your diagnostic assessment record, there's the directions for fluency assessment. Again, in the module, it doesn't give you a specific percentage of words the student needs to read correctly. It'll tell you to look at the directions for the assessment you're using. You have the directions in your Bader, but they're like a page long. So I put the basics here. For the Bader, we're looking for 95% accuracy. And if you notice on the student assessment record, we even told you how many words that is Sylvia Green on each passage. So on the grade 2 passage, they can make 5 or fewer errors and still be accurate. On the grade 3 passage, they can make 7 or fewer errors and still be accurate. So you've really got a nice little cheat sheet there, even for the number of errors that you can have in order to move the student on to the next higher passage. The module will also tell you to check the directions for the assessment you're using to see what kinds of errors are counted. And I've listed these for the Bader in the directions at the top of the page too. So when they're reading, omissions, substitutions that affect meaning, repetitions, insertions, and words pronounced by the tester are all counted as errors on the Bader. It takes a little time to remember all that. So I always try to just make good notes about what they do, and then I count up the errors kind of afterwards. When you find the highest level where the student is 95% accurate, you're going to record the instructional levels for accuracy and for rate and prosody on page 1 of the record again. And you'll learn in the module how to determine those, but page 1 reminds you, in case you forget, that the instructional level for accuracy is 1 level above the highest level where the student reads 95% of the words correctly. And that makes sense because you don't want to instruct for accuracy at a level of passage where they're already reading accurately, right? You want to go 1 above that, so you're challenging them. The instructional level for rate and prosody then is 1 level under the instructional level for accuracy. Because there you do need to have them reading on text that they're accurate on, because you're working on speeding up and smoothing out their reading with more expression. That's hard to do if you're not reading accurately. And again, if you haven't gotten to the fluency assessment module yet, that's okay. It'll explain it all in much more detail than I'm going into here. So if it sounds a little confusing, don't panic. It's going to make more sense after you watch it. Okay. And again, I've got the student passages. They start on page RP26 in the back of the book, or you can find them in that second document I emailed to you. I printed the fluency passages off and color coded them on yellow paper and put them into a yellow folder. And again, I wrote the grade level on the back of each passage so I can easily locate them. But I only put the number, not like grade 2, grade 6, those kinds of things. Questions so far? I listened to the T3 last week, right, where we talked about wait time. So I've been trying to practice all week long. The Bader doesn't have a vocabulary assessment included. So we're using the word meaning test, which can be downloaded free from the internet. I've downloaded it for you. And again, pages 6 and 7 of the student assessment record are the word meaning test. For this one, you don't have anything to hand to the student or to show the student. You just ask the student to tell you the meanings of the words. You pronounce them for them, and then you write down what they say as a definition, marking it right or wrong. And again, the directions are at the top of the page in that student assessment record, but you're looking for the highest level list where the student gets at least 4 of the 5 words correct. And when you find that highest level, you'll record the instructional level for vocabulary on page 1. And it reminds you there that the instructional level is 1 level higher than the level where they got 4 or 5 words correct. I don't have a folder for vocabulary in my kit because all I need is my student assessment record. It's just that page with the word lists on. And as we're going through, if I was going to administer this level 2 list from the word meaning test, I would just say, can you tell me what touch means? And if they can define touch, I would write down what they say and I would mark that either yes, it's correct or no, it's not. And again, you can find a link to the word meaning test in the resource section of the website and on the resource tab of module 8. And then finally for comprehension, again, we're using those secondary or adult passages from the Bader, and we're using the ones that we didn't use for fluency. This is for a couple of reasons actually, but mostly it's just because you get tired listening to it all the time, right? If you're doing the same passage. This time though, we're not having the students read aloud. Students read silently. And then we orally ask them the questions that go with those passages. In comprehension, they're reading silently. We ask them the questions. So pages 8 to 11 in your student assessment record have the comprehension passages and the questions. And again, the directions are at the top of page 8. For the Bader, we're looking for the highest passage where the student can get at least 75% of the questions correct. The assessment record also tells you how many questions need to be correct to reach 75% for each passage. And once you find that, you'll go back to page 1 of the student assessment record and record the instructional level for comprehension. Okay. There are always questions about whether or not you can let the student look back at the passage during comprehension assessment. It's perfectly okay for them to look at the passage, all right? It's a reading skill to be able to skim and find information that you're looking for. But there are limits, right? So if they're rereading the passage every time to try and find the answer to a question, that tells me that they've struggled in comprehending that passage. And I would make a note of that. One of the beauties of diagnostic assessment is that it is not as black and white as TABE testing is. This isn't a standardized test. So you have some wiggle room in what you're going to do when you're administering this assessment. You have a little bit more freedom than you have during standardized testing. And again, I've got my comprehension passages on blue cardstock, and I've got a blue folder where I put them so that I have everything organized and I know what I'm looking at when I'm looking at it, right? And again, you do not have to use the same system as me, but find some way to organize your materials, because you can't believe the mess that you can end up with if you're not sure what piece you're using for what thing and where you laid it down on top of your desk or on the table that you're sitting at. It can be difficult. So I've shown you how I've organized my materials. I sent you the student assessment record and the originals for all the student lists and passages to print if you'd like to use them. You don't have to use them. You can do any other thing you want to organize these materials and make them usable for you. But I will encourage you to make sure you find some organizational system. And I want to just talk a minute about if you're going to do any of these assessments remotely. We've actually had a lot of people in different states using diagnostic assessments and doing evidence-based reading instruction remotely over the last couple of years. These aren't secure tests that need special proctoring. Again, these aren't standardized assessments. You can do these on a Zoom or some other similar platform without special permission. Okay. Teachers who did these assessments remotely in the last couple of years put the lists and passages into PowerPoints so they could share their screen, pull up the lists or passages the students need to read, share their screen, and the students would read right off the screen. They use the same kinds of student assessment records that we've been looking at today. Teachers have also set up, more socially distanced assessment spaces. I know that we're kind of semi-post-COVID at this point, but we're also entering cold and flu season, which everything that I'm reading is said is going to be pretty nasty this year. So we might still not want to be sitting, shoulder to shoulder with our students while they're reading these things to us. So, you can set up kind of socially distant spaces. As long as you can hear them and they can hear you, you're going to be fine. You can organize your whole kit in a PowerPoint and do it, whether it's through a Zoom or projecting it up onto a screen in a room where the students are reading it even. So you don't have to hand stuff back and forth. And since we've got all these things electronically, you can organize it however you want to, make some tweaks and go forward with whatever method works for you the best way. Okay. Any questions? It's a lot of stuff that I threw at you in a very short period of time. So if you do have questions, don't hesitate to ask, or if you think of them later, you can always email me. Just a reminder, when you're going in and completing modules, always start by reading the discussion forum post that I put in the discussion. I'll try to preview what's important in the module to help you focus on some of the important things. And sometimes we give helpful information that you might need to do the module. Then go through the module, look at the resources. And again, all the next modules have really good examples and modeling for how to do those assessments. And then they have an assignment to go try out the diagnostic assessment with real students. When you're finished, you're going to submit your assignment for approval. I'll give you feedback and either approve it or ask you to make some changes and resubmit. Do not feel bad if I ask you to make some changes and resubmit. I know we're teachers and we preach to our students that mistakes are good and it's how you learn. But I got to tell you, we are very thin-skinned people sometimes, we teachers. Don't feel bad, because this is a complicated process and it's hard to learn. So if I send you some feedback and say, okay, this one needs some attention, just make this change. And a lot of times in this section of the training, that's what I'm going to say. It's like, you did everything right here, except remember about the instructional level, it's one level higher, make that change and then I'll mark it for approval. Don't worry about that. It's normal. It happens to everybody. It happened to me when I was going through training. So I'll give you that feedback, approve the module or ask you to make some changes and resubmit. And then you can always go back to that discussion forum and post comments or questions about what you learned or what you experienced when you were going through the process with your students. From our syllabus, your next steps are to complete modules 6 through 10 on your own. When I say on your own, that doesn't mean you can't talk to the other people in your group or other people in the discussion forum or to me about what you're doing if you have questions or if you want just a little moral support. Those modules, I'll explain the diagnostic assessment process and each component. And at the end of those 4 modules, you'll be practicing giving complete diagnostic assessments in module 10. You'll also see a video of complete diagnostic assessments in all 4 components. And then module 11, you guys, this is not that far away. I was just looking at the calendar today, is on December 15th. And that's when we're going to be face-to-face. I'm pretty sure based on where we're all located that you're probably all going to be coming to Huron. We're kind of centrally located for the people who are in this training group. So you'll probably come to Cornerstones and we'll have training here. If I get ambitious, I might even bake you some Christmas cookies. We'll see what happens. So, but it's only a few weeks away, which is scary. And then during that face-to-face meetings, we're going to be sharing those diagnostic assessment practice results that you've worked on, and we're going to go over those results, talk about what they mean, and really dig into them a little bit deeper, and then talk about how to use those results as you go into section 2 of the training after the first of the year, where you're going to get to talk about instructional strategies, which is a lot of fun. Any questions about what you're going to be doing next? If you're all good, I'm good too. I can let you go and get on with the rest of your Thursday. You guys are doing great. If you need anything, you know how to get a hold of me. Don't hesitate to contact me and ask. Let me know if there's anything I can do to help. All right. Okay. Have a great rest of your day. Have a great weekend.
Bye.
Bye-bye.